How do you talk to cops? Well, how do cops talk to you? I'm sure that you've heard you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will blah blah blah. This is Trent Goodbody is the name I use, and this is Partially Woke. Today, let's examine this very common statement that is pretty much only heard these days on movies and TV. So, you have the right to remain silent, huh? In other words, what they're saying is that you have the right to not incriminate yourself, including remaining silent, providing documents, or even having property seized without a reason. The second thing they say is anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. In other words, we will use what you say to incriminate you. But that's in direct contradiction to the Fifth Amendment, which says you have the right to not incriminate yourself in your person, papers, and effects. So you have the right to not incriminate yourself by providing testimony or documents, both prior to and after arrest. They like to say, oh, you have the right to remain silent if you had it after, you have it before. Okay? There's this thing called the exclusionary rule that is very important. I want you to Google it. I might end up Googling it for you and showing it up here. But the exclusionary rule says that testimony obtained improperly is not admissible. In other words, testimony obtained through threat, duress, or coercion is not admissible. So make them threaten you first. They have to threaten you before they actually, they're not just going to pull a gun out and plug you in the head. They have to threaten you first. So when they threaten you, give them everything that they want. Except, don't give them evidence of contract. Don't give them an admission of guilt. And very, very important, don't give them a promise to appear. Because a promise is not taken lightly by the court. So you shouldn't take it lightly either. You don't need to be making promises that you don't intend on keeping anyway. So if you do make a promise, refuse it for cause within 72 hours, and you can Google that too. It's all out there. But the best thing is to not be making promises to strangers. So when I get stopped and they're asking for all kinds of stuff from me, license, insurance, registration, blah, 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 I ask them, are you planning on using any of that stuff against me in court? Because I'm not into self-incrimination. And I say it like it's a joke. I never say anything out of anger at them, ever, because you don't want to be seen that way. You want to be seen as peaceful. Hopefully they got body cams. Hopefully you got dash cams. If you don't have a dash cam running, you shouldn't even be doing this because you need to have all your ducks in a row. So what I was saying, I just said that what I ask them when they ask me for license, registration, insurance, are you planning on using any of that of that stuff against me in court? Because I'm not into self-incrimination. The reason why I say this is because they always rely on you to snitch on yourself. They rely also on you having an agreement with the DMV. If you do have a licensing agreement with the DMV, I bet that there's a clause in that agreement where you have to produce a license upon demand of a law enforcement officer. And I bet it says you have to be subject to legislative policy as well, and vehicle code, I'm sure. So if you don't use the roads for profit, I would seriously consider rescinding that licensing agreement with the DMV. I mean, we enslave ourselves. So after you've been threatened, tell them that you have, after you've been threatened, you can give them some information. You can give them the name that you use, serial number, birth date, but make sure you clarify all these things. Make sure you tell them that you rescinded the serial number and that you aren't supposed to be using it. What are they going to think about that? You can also give them the birth date, but clarify that the birth was an event where a document was created by the government, not you. It's not you. It's not your stuff. Because I was created 9 months prior to that date of birth. Okay? Remember that. The name that you use could also be a government entity, so say that you believe it is the name that you use, but there could also be a very similar name that was created by government, so I don't own it. unless you have done the assumed name certificate through MNSOS, and you can ask me about that. If you want me to do a video about that, I'll do it. I can even do a more in-depth video about how to talk to the cops, but I think it's pretty simple. You just have to be able to see through the lies and deception. And this is where I rely on my conscience. And I spoil my conscience because I feel like my conscience is who I call God as well. And because I listen to my conscience and my intuition, I'm able to save my own ass on more than one occasion. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But I wanted to say first, this video is not an extensive guide. So please do not attempt this until you have done your homework and are comfortable with yourself and your knowledge base and exercised your intuition until you're comfortable in your own skin. Knowledge is power. With knowledge comes confidence. So don't give up. And it can be tough. Learning this stuff and subjecting yourself to this information is going to contradict your programming from literally birth. From literally when you were just a little baby, you started getting programmed. So a good friend of mine told me one time that about this way to think of learning. When you're learning something new and you're having trouble processing it, just bite off a little bite and expose yourself to it and allow yourself time to process after that, and continue and repeat and keep doing that over and over again. It's called the layers of paint technique. You apply a coat of paint and then you let it dry and then you put a new coat of paint, okay? And this is for studying. If you hit a spot where you're just like, oh, we all get that, where the brain hurts and stuff, all you gotta do is give it a break and let it process. And believe me, you'll be glad you did, because you'll gain way better understanding that way. So, along with that, there's a couple things left I want to do. I want to tell you a couple little stories about intuition, and I want to read you another excerpt from my book. Intuition. I've had several experiences, and I'm about to share with you a couple of them, of where intuition was really, really important and saved my butt with the private tags. See, one time I was in an elk preserve on the California coast, and I was living on the road for years and stuff, and I got pretty good at listening to my intuition. One day I was on at an elk preserve, and I was smoking a joint in my car, and the car was getting kind of hot box, cloudy, and something told me, little small still voice inside my head said, "It's time to go." So I left, and as I was pulling out through the driveway, 3 rangers were headed right to the parking lot where I was at alone. And I know it wasn't going to be good. They weren't going to just, ignore me. Clouds coming out my windows and stuff. Anyways, another time I was in Vegas, parked at a 7-Eleven. And I was sitting there with my dogs in the car in an old crappy Honda that didn't have any air conditioning, and it was really hot, and the dogs were upset, and I was trying to figure out what to do, where to go. Once again, that still small voice told me, doesn't matter where you go, you just gotta leave here. And as I was pulling out of the parking lot of that 7-Eleven, a Metropolitan Police Department officer car was pulling in the parking lot. So, man, I'm not kidding about learning how to exercise and trust and listen to your intuition. This saved my ass a bunch of times. Okay, so I just wanted to read a little bit of this book to you again called Argument. And this has a lot to do with talking to the cops. Talking to anyone, actually. So I'll start now. Argument. "I'm not going to argue with you," is a common response from police officers when you try to talk to them. It's an easy way for them to close down the conversation. You never want to argue, because to argue is to get stuck in a form of a duel. You can and probably will lose. In law school, typically for the final exam, students will be chosen to represent a side in a historic case with a landmark decision. Each side will argue, and the best argument will win. But anyone can win. All you have to do is have the best argument. Lawyers are bound to procedure. They're unable to challenge the court because they they have sworn an oath to uphold its rule. All they can do is argue. They cannot question procedure because it is a rule. And once you've sworn an oath to uphold something, it is binding on your soul. Oaths are bad because once you swear them, you lose your ability to make certain choices in the future. We never want to argue. And to do this, we may need to relearn how we think. Let's think about an argument for a second. What is an argument? Wikipedia says, in logic and philosophy, an argument is an attempt to persuade someone of something by giving reasons for accepting a particular conclusion as evident. The general structure of an argument in a natural language is that of premises in support of a claim, which is the conclusion. The premises are typically in the form of prepositions, statements, or sentences. The structure of some arguments can also be set out in a formal language, and formally defined arguments can be made independently of natural language arguments, as in math, logic, and computer science. So an argument is an attempt to persuade someone of something in support of a claim. It is only an attempt. We need something better than that. Not only can an attempt fail, but the word attempt doesn't sound like it could be very effective in the first place. We're not trying to persuade anyone of anything. It is not necessary. An argument is constructed of prepositions, statements, and sentences. An argument is not final, and typically an argument can be disproven, rebutted, or compromised. I think I'll make a video about unrebuttables in a further video later on. You can comment and let me know if you'd like me to do one, and that might speed up the process a little bit. But I'm going to actually continue. I think I have a little bit of time today. I think I don't have a 10-minute limit anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and read this next chapter from my book called Honor and Controversy. If you treat someone with honor and respect, what can you expect in return? If you get stopped by an officer and you start screaming, "I know my rights!" the officer is going to say to himself, "Really? You know your rights, huh? Well, I'm going to show you what your rights really are." And then you're in a world of crap because you have to sue, fight your way through court, deal with jail, maybe even an ass kicking, and altogether not have a good time. In the end, you were at war instead of being honorable. A police officer is just a man like you. If you treat him with kindness and honor, how do you think he's going to treat you? Are you trying to get out of something? If you have done harm to another's body or property, you'll need to take responsibility and do what you can do to make it right. But that doesn't mean you need to enter a guilty plea. What does it mean to be guilty anyway? Does it mean you feel really bad? Or is it like calling a truce because you got caught doing something against the law without feeling any genuine guilt? Always be honorable. To be honorable is to not cause controversy. You cause a controversy when you claim something you do not own, namely, the name. Always call it the name for your own safety. It's the name that you use. Easy as that. And remember that you are not a fictional entity whose existence is on a piece of paper. And if someone is mistaking you, the man or woman, for a piece of paper, there's obviously been a mistake. So what is that mistake? Who am I to say what the mistake is? Who am I? In other words, the mistake is who I actually am. So yeah, if you want to learn about unrebuttables or non-rebuttables, this book is available for free ebook at shop.freedomfromgovernment.org. It's never going to have a price. The ebook will always be free. And you can, sorry to pick my nose there for a minute, but you can download it for free and be, learning how to deal with any kind of adversary that's trying to cause you trouble in the world. So what are you waiting for? Shop.freedomfromgovernment.org. And thank you for your time again today for a little bit longer video. For 4 days, 4 videos. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep making videos every single day. So you can't expect me to keep doing this every day. But I want to try to do it. And I don't want to disappoint you guys. So thanks for coming out and watching my new video. And hopefully I'll see you again real soon. Peace.